"Please, I wouldn't ask if it weren't serious," she whispered, trembling. And that's when he leaned closer and said, "Only if you give me a kiss." Everyone thought he was heartless, but no one knew what was really going on behind that cold stare. Until that moment, Isabella Bella Reyes had never left work early. In her 2 years working at Astor and Gold Financial, she was the quiet achiever, disciplined, humble, and invisible among a sea of corporate ambition. But today, her hands were trembling. Her phone lit up with a message that made her world tilt. Mama collapsed again. "They're taking her to County General. Hurry." Her younger sister, Anna, had never sounded so scared. Their mother, Maria, had fought lupus for the past decade. Every flare-up was dangerous. Every hospital visit chipped away at her strength. And their savings. After their father died when Bella was just 15, she became the protector, the planner, the fighter. She had no choice. Now at 26, Bella worked under the most demanding boss in the city, Dominic Astor, a tech investor turned corporate mogul, dubbed the Ice King by every employee who had ever dared step into his office. Cold, calculated, powerful. People said he didn't care about emotions or people. Bella had seen glimpses, though, subtle signs that made her wonder, a quiet act of kindness, a moment of hesitation. But today she had no time to wonder. She had to go. 3:45 p.m. The doors of the executive elevator opened with a whisper, and Dominic Astor stepped out in a storm gray suit tailored like armor. "Miss Reyes," he said without looking up, "is the Peterson portfolio ready?" Yes, it's on your desk." Her voice shook, just slightly. Dominic paused. That pause was long enough for Bella to feel her heart slam in her chest. She gathered all her courage. "Sir, may I need to leave early. There's a family emergency. My mother's in the hospital." And he raised his eyes, those infamous steel blue eyes that didn't blink often, didn't soften. He stared. Then, finally, he stepped forward, leaned close enough to make her breath hitch, and said, "Only if you give me a kiss." Dead silence. Bella's face turned pale. Had she heard that right? Dominic's expression was unreadable. Then he blinked once, slowly, and added, "Kiss your dreams goodbye if you leave this office without finishing that report." Her lips parted in shock. Her hands clenched. Was it a cruel joke? Was this the real Dominic Astor everyone feared? But then, something happened. Asterisk watched her closely, closer than usual. And in that moment of silence, something broke in Dominic's voice. "I lost my mother too, at 26. He looked away. The air shifted. Bella's anger dissolved into confusion. "You have 10 minutes. Go. I'll handle the boardroom," he said, turning his back. She couldn't believe it. Not the permission, but the vulnerability she saw in his eyes just for a flicker. The flicker no one else ever seemed to notice. Bella ran down 40 floors, into a cab, to the hospital. She clutched her phone, replaying the words over and over again. The way he said it, the double meaning, the unexpected softness that crept in. Afterward, she should have been furious, but she wasn't, because maybe the man they all called heartless wasn't heartless at all. She hadn't slept, not really. Bella sat on the bus the next morning, her forehead resting lightly against the window as the city blurred past her. The sunlight had barely risen, but the weight on her shoulders made the day feel heavy already. Her mother was stable now, resting after a long night of tests, drips, and hushed updates from tired nurses. But what haunted her most wasn't the machines or her mother's pale face. It was his words, "Only if you give me a kiss." She knew what he'd meant, what he actually meant. But that first moment, that first second, the way he said it, she couldn't shake the sound of his voice. It wasn't teasing. It wasn't cruel. It was strange, like a man testing the world, to see if it would finally flinch. And then he let her go, just like that. No threats, no punishment, no consequences. When she reached her desk on the 28th floor of Astor and Gold, the lights were still off. Most of the office wouldn't arrive for another hour. She unlocked her computer, intending to catch up on the work she missed. But something stopped her. An envelope, cream-colored, no name. She turned it over, her fingers brushing across expensive paper stock. Her heart tapped against her ribs, slowly. She slid the note free and unfolded it. The handwriting was sharp, lean, and unmistakably his. Your mother's strength is admirable. So is yours. I'll expect your insight on the Peterson data by noon. No rush. DA, that was it. Bella read it again. And again. It wasn't just the content. It was how it was written. No scolding, no judgment, no pretense. The last line, no rush, felt like the loudest thing he'd ever said to her. For the first time, she wondered if the man they all feared had once been broken in ways no one had ever asked about. She tucked the note inside her notebook just as the elevator chimed. He stepped out exactly as he always did, crisp suit, unreadable expression, phone in hand. But this time, as his eyes met hers, something passed between them, a flicker, a silence that said more than words. She stood. Mr. Astor, I'll have the revisions to you soon. You stayed late, he asked, without looking up from his phone. No, sir. I came in early. A pause, the faintest crease touched his brow. You didn't need to. I wanted to. Her voice was calm, clear. He looked at her fully this time, noted. And just as he turned to walk toward his office, he paused just for a heartbeat, then added without turning, I hope she gets better, truly. He said it like a man unpracticed in kindness, like someone who wanted to say more, but didn't trust his voice to carry it. Bella stood frozen, unsure what to feel, gratitude, confusion, both. Later that afternoon, while sorting through a pile of outdated files, she found another note tucked inside the manila folder labeled Archival -2021. It was handwritten again. Do you ever feel like the people we try hardest to protect are the ones who never even know how much we've given up for them? She stared at it, unsure if he had meant for her to find it, or if it was something he'd forgotten, left behind like a thought. He wasn't brave enough to speak aloud. That night, when the office was empty, she sat at her desk long after she finished her work. She didn't need to stay, but something in her heart told her not to leave just yet. It wasn't about loyalty to a company. It wasn't even about her job. It was something deeper, a pull she couldn't explain. And when Dominic passed her desk on the way out and stopped, for the briefest moment, their eyes met again. Still no words, but she didn't need them. He nodded. She nodded back. Neither of them knew it yet. But this was only the beginning of everything. The rain hadn't been in the forecast. Bella stood at the edge of the sidewalk. Her blazer clutched over her head as sheets of rain poured down over the glimmering city. She wasn't prepared for it, no. Umbrella, no plan. Just a heart that still hadn't slowed since she'd read that second note from him. She didn't even know if he meant for her to find it. Maybe it was misplaced. Or maybe he had wanted her to see it. She hadn't told anyone about it. Not Anna, not her best friend Maya, not even herself out loud. But that question, it lingered in her mind like a whisper at the back of a crowded room. Do you ever feel like the people we try hardest to protect are the ones who never even know how much we've given up for them? She did feel that. Every day, every choice, every sacrifice she'd made since she was 17. The job she didn't take, the nights she didn't sleep, the way she pushed herself through exhaustion just to make sure her sister had what she needed. And her mother didn't feel like a burden. She had never told anyone. But somehow, he knew. By the time she reached the lobby of her building, drenched and breathless, a figure was already waiting for her by the glass doors. It was Dominic. He wasn't supposed to be there. Not on a Friday evening when he usually disappeared into some high-rise suite or luxury car. But there he stood, suit crisp as always, though his tie was missing and the top button of his shirt was undone. Miss Reyes, he said, voice steady, but his eyes flickering with something unsure. I thought you might need a ride. She blinked, breath catching. You? What? I saw the forecast, he said simply, as if that explained it. She hesitated, unsure whether to laugh, cry, or just walk past him. But something in her heart said stay. I'm fine, she said, trying to sound unaffected. I'm used to walking, I know, he replied. That's why I came. There it was again, that strange honesty wrapped inside his quiet demeanor, like he was trying to say something without breaking whatever invisible shield he had built around himself. They stood there in silence until he stepped aside, gesturing toward the car behind him. Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes. She nodded. Slowly. The car ride was quiet for the first few blocks. The soft hum of the engine, the occasional thud of rain against the windows, and the sound of two people thinking far too hard about things they weren't ready to say. I wasn't trying to make you uncomfortable, he said suddenly. That day, when I made that remark about the kiss, she turned, surprised that he'd brought it up. I know, she said softly. You didn't mean it the way it sounded. He glanced sideways, relieved. Maybe, or surprised that she understood. I say things that sound like commands when really, I don't know how to ask for anything. That confession came out like a secret falling through a crack in a wall. She wasn't sure he even meant to say it. Bella smiled, just a little. You just did. They both looked forward then, the tension between them quiet, but very real. She felt her heart fluttering, not with romance, not yet, but with something deeper. Recognition. This wasn't about power. This wasn't about a job. This was about two people carrying silent weights, realizing for the first time that someone else understood what it meant to keep going. Even when no one clapped for you. Dominic pulled the car over by the corner where her apartment was. He didn't say anything at first. Then he handed her something from the side pocket of the car door. It was a thin manila folder. What's this? She asked. A side project. Something that's not on the company's official books. I'd like your eyes on it. Fresh perspective, no pressure, just your thoughts. She stared at it. It was unlike him to hand off work in this way casually, even respectfully. Why me? He didn't answer immediately. Then finally, he said, because I trust you. 3 words. But they held more weight than anything he'd said all week. She nodded, hugging the folder close. I'll take a look. He didn't wait for more. He just gave her one final glance, warm, unreadable, and drove off into the night. Back upstairs, Bella opened the folder, expecting spreadsheets, notes, and charts. But tucked inside the front page was something else. A photo. It was old, worn. A young boy with messy dark hair, standing beside a woman with bright eyes and tired hands. The caption scribbled on the back said, 1995. Me and Mom. It was Dominic. He had never mentioned family, not once. But now Bella realized that maybe, just maybe, the man they all called untouchable was actually holding on by threads of memories. Threads he hadn't shown anyone else. She pressed the photo back into the folder, heart pounding, and whispered, to the empty room. Who are you, really? Dominic asked her, and for the first time, she truly wanted to know. Asterisk, she hadn't planned to see him again so soon. After the folder, after the photo, Bella thought perhaps Dominic would retreat behind his usual walls, disappear into meetings and deadlines like he always did. She told herself it was fine, expected even, but she hadn't expected the text, not from his personal number, not on a Sunday afternoon. Office power outage, server down, need help locating backup files. Building still open, if you're free, then, as if catching himself, if not, I understand. She stared at the screen for a long time, sitting cross-legged on her living room floor, surrounded by laundry she hadn't folded and a sister who hadn't stopped talking about college forms. Her mom was resting, drifting in and out of sleep, and for the first time in days, the house felt still. She texted back before she could talk herself out of it. On my way. The office building was dark except for emergency lights blinking in the corners. A security guard waved her in. Elevators weren't working, so she took the stairs. 28 floors. She didn't mind. When she pushed the door open to the floor, she found Dominic standing near the windows, city lights flickering behind him, casting long shadows across the floor. No suit jacket, sleeves rolled up, tie loose. It didn't feel like work. It felt like something else. I didn't expect you to actually come, he said quietly. You asked, she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. You don't usually ask. He gave the faintest smile, more in his eyes than his mouth. I'm learning. They worked side by side in the dim glow of laptops and backup batteries, digging through file structures and folders. But there were moments, long silences, unfinished sentences where neither of them moved. Caught in the quiet tension of everything unspoken. At one point, she reached for a box of records. and he moved to help. Their hands touched, just for a second, but it was enough that she froze. So did he. The moment stretched, breathless and uncertain. I found the backups, she said quickly, retreating into the screen. He didn't move. He just watched her with eyes that saw more than she wanted to admit. Bella, he said softly, her name like a question and a memory all at once. She turned, slowly, expecting a request, a command. Instead, he asked something else. Do you believe people can change? She swallowed. Yes, but only if they want to. He nodded, almost to himself. I didn't used to. Not until recently. She didn't ask what changed. She didn't have to. The silence between them shifted, grew warmer, sadder. There's a reason I don't get close to people, he continued. It's easier not to disappoint anyone when you don't let them expect anything. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the truth in his eyes. The ache of someone who had once needed grace and never received it. You're wrong, she said softly. He looked up. People don't expect perfection, just honesty. Another silence. Then the lights flickered once, twice, and everything went dark. Complete blackout. Generator must have gone down, Dominic muttered, pulling out his phone for flashlight mode. You okay? I'm fine, she replied, but her voice shook just enough for him to notice here. He said, holding the light up, we'll wait it out near the break room. There are emergency supplies, flashlights, water. They sat across from each other, separated by nothing but a small table and a sea of questions neither of them knew how to ask. He broke the silence first. You remind me of her. Bella blinked. Who? My mother. She waited. He rarely spoke. Of his past. She worked 2 jobs, took care of me and my sister, never complained, never asked for anything. I used to think that was strength. Now I think, maybe she just didn't know how to ask for help. Bella's throat tightened. She passed when I was 22. I never told her thank you. Not once. You were just a kid. I was angry, he said, his voice breaking slightly, at the world, at her, at myself. She reached out before she could stop herself. Not to touch, just to close the space. You don't have to carry that forever. He met her eyes then, really met them, and for the first time, he didn't look like a boss, or a billionaire, or even a man in control. He looked like someone who wanted to be seen. And she saw him. The room remained dark, but everything else felt clear. The air between them, the weight of everything they'd both carried. He leaned forward slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. That day when I said what I said, I regret how it sounded. I was trying to push you away. I thought it was safer. You don't have to explain, she whispered. I want to. And then, still not touching, still in that fragile space of discovery, he said something she hadn't expected. I don't want to push you away anymore. Her breath caught, not because of the words, but because she believed him. He didn't kiss her. He didn't reach for her. He just sat there, open, unarmored. And for a man like Dominic Astor, that was more intimate than any kiss could ever be. Outside, the rain had stopped. The lights remained off. But inside that quiet room, something had turned on between them, something neither of them could name yet. But both had already begun to feel. Astor's she couldn't sleep. Not after that night. Every time Bella closed her eyes, she was back in that dark room sitting across from a man the world feared. A man she thought she'd understood. Until he let her see the part of him no one else had ever met. He hadn't touched her. He hadn't even tried. But somehow, the silence between them had been louder than 1,000 words. And his last sentence still echoed in her heart. I don't want to push you away anymore. She told no one, not Anna, not her mother, not even herself fully. Because some moments were too fragile to explain. They had to be held, quietly, like a secret between the heart and the soul. By Monday, the office was humming again, keyboards tapping, phones ringing, people rushing through deadlines like nothing had changed. But something had changed, at least, for her, and maybe for him. Dominic didn't look at her the same way anymore. His glances were longer, quieter, like he was searching for something, or trying not to let something show. She noticed everything. How he waited an extra second before ending their meetings. How he remembered her coffee order. How he no longer barked instructions, but asked with intention. And then came the invitation, a thin email, with no subject line, and only one sentence inside. Dinner tonight. Not business. Just you and me. She stared at it for a long time, not because she didn't know what to say, but because some part of her had been waiting for that invitation, and it scared her more than she wanted to admit. She typed a reply with trembling fingers. Okay. Just you and me. He chose a quiet restaurant by the river. No suits, no assistants, no formalities. Just Dominic in a simple navy shirt, sleeves rolled up again, and Bella in a soft blue dress she hadn't worn since college graduation. The kind of dress that made her feel seen, not flashy, just herself. They sat at a corner table, candles flickering gently, rain misting the windows outside. He didn't talk about work. He didn't talk about projections or presentations or reports. He asked about her. About her mother, her sister, her childhood. What scared her? What made her laugh? She told him about her father's guitar, still hanging in the hallway, and how she used to sing to her mother on difficult nights. She shared stories she hadn't told anyone in years, and he listened, really listened, like every word mattered. And then she asked him something she'd been holding back since that first note. Why me? She whispered. He looked down for a moment, then lifted his eyes slowly. Because you see me, he said simply, and you don't look away. Her heart thudded in her chest. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small, folded photo, and placed it on the table between them. It was the same one from the folder, the one of him and his mother. I carry this everywhere, he said, but I've never shown it to anyone, not until you. Bella touched the edge of the photo with gentle fingers. She looks kind. She was too kind, and I was too angry to appreciate it when I had the chance. She met his eyes. You still carry her. He gave a small, broken smile. Some days, I wonder if that's strength or punishment. It's love, she said. And it doesn't have to hurt to be real. They sat in silence after that. Not awkward, but full of the things they didn't need to say. After dinner, they walked by the water. Lights from the bridges shimmered in the river. His jacket brushed her shoulder. Their hands were inches apart. And then he paused. He turned toward her slowly, not in a rush, not as a move, just a moment. I almost kissed you once, he said, voice low. That day you asked to leave. I said it as a joke, but it wasn't. Not really. I think I was testing something. You. Me. I don't know. She didn't answer. He stepped closer. I didn't want that kiss then. Not like that. Not from fear. Not as a condition. Her breath caught. The space between them was barely a whisper now. I want to earn it, he said, if you ever give it. I want it to be yours, not mine. And then he didn't move. He waited. The air was thick with possibility. Her heart raced. Her mind whispered every reason to run, every rule she was breaking just by standing here with him. But her heart stayed still. And that silence between them, the same one they'd sat in that night, wrapped around them again like a promise waiting to be kept. She stepped forward, not to kiss him, but to rest her forehead lightly against his chest. Just for a second, he didn't speak. He just exhaled and wrapped his arms gently around her, as if she were something sacred. Because to him, maybe she was. And in that quiet embrace, under a soft drizzle of rain and 1,000 unspoken feelings, Bella knew something had shifted for good. Whatever this was becoming, it wasn't a condition. It was a beginning. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Bella almost didn't notice it at first. It was tucked inside her work notebook, one she hadn't opened in days, between hospital visits, preparing Anna's college paperwork, and the whirlwind of emotions she still hadn't named. Life had blurred into something that didn't quite feel like hers, but the moment her fingers brushed the envelope, she still got no name, just her handwriting on the cover, not his. She opened it slowly, heart pounding, and unfolded a page that smelled faintly of clean ink and something else, maybe his cologne, or maybe just memory. Inside, in simple, careful strokes, was the truth she hadn't expected. I wrote this days ago, before dinner, before that night by the river. I wasn't sure I'd ever give it to you, but I want you to read it now, because silence has stolen enough from me in this life, and I won't let it take anything more. You asked me once why I chose you. I could say it's because you're brilliant, or loyal, or calm under pressure. But that's not the real reason. I chose you because when I looked at you, I saw someone who carries things quietly, the same way I do, someone who gives more than she gets, someone who has every reason to quit, but shows up anyway. And in a world that constantly asks for more, you gave enough. You were enough. Bella read those last lines over and over again, tears stinging her eyes not because of the words, but because they were written by someone who had once made her feel like nothing. Now, he was telling her the exact opposite. She pressed the letter to her chest. Later that evening, she returned to the office long after everyone had gone. She didn't expect to find him there. She only needed space, to breathe, to think. But when the elevator doors opened, he was already sitting at her desk, waiting, not in a suit, just jeans, a soft sweater, and an expression she had never seen on his face before. Hope. He stood slowly as she stepped in. I almost didn't give you the letter, he said, breaking the silence. I know, she replied, but I'm glad you did. She reached into her bag, pulled out something folded, and handed it to him. It was her reply, her own letter, words she hadn't dared say aloud, words that only paper could hold. He unfolded it carefully. I stayed because I saw the cracks, and I knew what it was like to fall through them. I stayed because for once, someone looked at me and didn't see what I owed, but what I carried. And even though I came here chasing security, I found something better. I found someone who listened when no one else did, who asked without taking, who changed without asking me to. He looked up from the paper, his voice barely holding together. I didn't think anyone could see that version of me. She stepped closer, steady now. I didn't think anyone would give me a choice, this time. He didn't move forward. This time, she did. There was no fear, no power play, no bargain. Just two people who had stopped pretending. And when she finally reached him, and he took her hands in his, the world around them went still. I'm not the same man I was when you asked to leave, he said quietly. And I don't want it to be. You're not, she whispered. And neither am I. The kiss when it came wasn't a condition. It was a promise of slow mornings and shared burdens, of small joys and earned trust, of learning each other's silences and filling them with peace. It was a kiss of permission, not his, hers. Months later, as Bella stood in the hospital holding her mother's hand through another recovery, Dominic walked in quietly, flowers in one hand and soup in the other. Her mother smiled. You finally brought him, she said softly. I was beginning to think he wasn't real. Bella laughed, eyes shining. He is, just unexpected. Her mother nodded. Good. Life doesn't need perfect, it needs real. And as Dominic knelt by her mother's bedside, helping her sit up with gentle hands that used to build empires, Bella realized something she'd known for a while now. This wasn't just a love story. It was a healing one, of two broken pieces that didn't just fit but helped each other become whole. And it had all started with a request to leave early, and a man who finally learned how to stay.